Former Justice Robert Jackson warned that a prosecutor driven by malice becomes one of the worst forces in society. Senator Klobuchar just invoked that warning to expose what's unfolding now, a president ordering prosecutions of enemies while pardoning allies. This isn't policy debate, it's the systematic demolition of the firewall between law enforcement and political revenge. What follows is a reckoning with that collapse.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Former Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson, who later became the chief prosecutor at Nuremberg, gave an address in 1940 when he was Attorney General, and it was titled Federal Prosecutor. He said, while the prosecutor at his best is one of the most beneficent forces in our society, when he acts from malice or other base motives, he is one of the worst. Unfortunately, President Trump, driven by clear malice, ordered the prosecution of James Comey, a prosecution which was rejected by a career Republican prosecutor who had looked at the facts and looked at the evidence for months. In a country devoted to the rule of law, it is simply unconscionable for the president to direct the Justice Department to engage in political prosecutions against the recommendations of a career prosecutor. Maybe you think this is small. Maybe you all know that Comey will win this case, as he said himself, bring it on, go to trial. But to me, it is much deeper than that. Donald Trump posted on social media, and the whole world saw his instructions to the Attorney General to go after his perceived political enemies, including the former director of the FBI, who, by the way, was a Republican-appointed U.S. attorney, served a number of positions under Republicans, was my law school classmate, so I know a little bit about his politics. He ordered the Justice Department to go after the sitting Attorney General in the state of New York, and he even ordered the entire Justice Department to go after a member of this committee. And if that is not chilling to my colleagues and they don't care about this, I don't even know what to say anymore. Pam Bondi came before this committee, and I asked her questions about this, and she said to me, and these are her words, politics will not play a part in our decisions. Here you go. So when Donald Trump couldn't find someone in the Justice Department to bring the charges against Comey, he pushed out Eric Siebert, a conservative Republican, by Mark Warner's account, a prosecutor that was recommended by the Republican governor of the state of Virginia, and he installed a White House aide to overrule the career prosecutors. He is pressuring the Justice Department about whom to prosecute rather than letting the career prosecutor make a decision about the facts and the laws. That's not justice. As former Trump White House attorney Ty Cobb said, we have a president for the first time in history ordering his AG to indict his enemies. And the AG, instead of being the independent force she's supposed to be, is saying, yes, sir. How can I get that done? Andrew McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor and conservative commentator, also said that this was a vindictive indictment, incomprehensible, and a mess. You know, I was a prosecutor for 8 years, ran a sizable office, and people would call, hey, don't go after that kid. Oftentimes the kid would be like 35 years old. And not once did I ever go to the career prosecutor and say, get rid of that case, don't do that, oh, have less of a sentence. Because when you cross that line, because you have had that kind of political pressure put on you, you can't go back. You can't go back. You took an oath to represent the government, the people, whether it's a state, whether it is the country, and not to represent, in this case, the president. And this is not happening in a vacuum. At the same time, the president directs investigations and prosecutions of his perceived enemies. He gives pardons to and rewards his friends. The administration reportedly shut down an investigation into border czar Tom Homan for accepting a $50,000 cash bribe. The president pardoned January 6 insurrectionists who assaulted police officers in this very building. And he pressured prosecutors to dismiss a corruption case against Eric Adams. It was Hayden Scotton who was the career prosecutor in that case, someone who had clerked for Justice Roberts and then Judge Kavanaugh. And he said this when he was asked to do the dirty work. He wouldn't do the corrupt work. He said, "You will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." That's what this is about. And all of us, elected by our states, have to look in our own conscience and think, is this going to be me? Am I going to go along with this, or am I going to say something about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very.
What Senator Klobuchar did in this speech was more than accusation. It was a surgical dissection of how justice becomes injustice when prosecutors answer to political masters instead of evidence. She opened with Robert Jackson, the Supreme Court justice who prosecuted Nazi war criminals at Nuremberg. His 1940 warning remains the moral center of prosecutorial ethics. A prosecutor driven by malice is one of the worst forces in society. Klobuchar uses that frame to show exactly what's unfolding now. President Trump publicly ordered the Justice Department to indict James Comey, the former FBI director. A career Republican prosecutor reviewed the case for months and rejected it based on facts and evidence. That should have ended it. But when that prosecutor refused to bring charges, Trump replaced him. He pushed out Eric Sabert, a conservative Republican recommended by Virginia's Republican governor, and installed a White House aide to overrule the professionals. That's not personnel management. It's corruption of process. When a president fires prosecutors who won't follow orders and replaces them with loyalists, prosecutorial independence collapses. This matters because prosecution is one of the most powerful tools a government wields. It can destroy reputations, drain bank accounts, and end careers even when the accused is ultimately acquitted. When charging decisions are based on the president's enemies list, you convert the Justice Department from a law enforcement agency into a political weapon. Trump didn't stop with Comey. He publicly ordered investigations into New York's Attorney General and even a sitting senator. Those aren't private grievances. They're directives that create pressure throughout the entire Justice Department. Klobuchar confronted Pam Bondi's contradiction directly. Bondi testified under oath that politics would not play a part in Justice Department decisions, but the evidence shows otherwise. Trump's public orders, the removal of prosecutors who refuse to comply, and the installation of loyalists willing to overrule career staff all contradict Bondi's assurance. You can't claim independence while executing a political hit list. Then there's selective enforcement. While Trump orders prosecutions of enemies, he pardons allies. He shut down an investigation into Tom Homan for allegedly accepting a $50,000 bribe. He pardoned January 6 insurrectionists who assaulted Capitol Police. He pressured prosecutors to dismiss corruption charges against Eric Adams. That's a two-tier system. Harsh enforcement for opponents, protective leniency for supporters. Klobuchar spoke from experience as a prosecutor for 8 years. She described the pressure she received to drop cases or reduce sentences for personal or political reasons. She never complied because crossing that line destroys credibility permanently. Once you make a charging decision based on outside pressure, you can't credibly claim independence again. Hayden Scotton, the prosecutor pressured to dismiss the Adams case, refused. He said someone else might be foolish or cowardly enough to file the motion, but it would never be him. That's integrity under pressure. The systemic risk is institutional collapse. If career prosecutors believe their bosses will fire them for following evidence, they'll either leave or self-censor. Complex investigations requiring sustained effort over years depend on professionals who trust the system will back them. When that trust erodes, so does effectiveness. The best prosecutors walk away. Those who remain second-guess every decision through a political lens. Foreign partners lose confidence. Witnesses refuse to cooperate. The damage radiates outward. What should accountability look like? Strengthen statutory protections for career prosecutors against politically motivated removals. Require Inspector General review when senior officials overrule career recommendations. Enforce recusal standards so attorneys general don't oversee investigations involving the president's personal interests. But the heaviest lift is cultural. Laws help, but they're only as strong as the people who enforce them. That requires leaders who value truth over loyalty and understand that prosecutorial power exists to protect the public, not settle scores. Klobuchar's warning is urgent because once these norms collapse, rebuilding takes decades. The system survives only when citizens insist that no president gets to use federal law enforcement as a personal vendetta machine. If we accept that presidents can order prosecutions and fire prosecutors who resist, we've abandoned the rule of law. That's not justice. That's autocracy with a gavel.